computer interface. Many of you probably are aware of this who have used the Zoom platform. There's a button on the computer interface. Just press the button and so we can see your hand. And then we will take your testimony in order as you appear on our screen, in the order as your hand appears on the screen. When we get to you, you will be unmuted. Everybody else will remain muted, but you will be unmuted. You will then proceed with your testimony. We will then mute you and unmute the next person, and so on and so forth. There is a question, excuse me. There is a question and answer interface that you can use, but try to be brief and concise, and we'll try to answer, excuse me. We'll try to answer your question with the chat function as things move along. During this process, we're not going to really be answering a lot of questions as we go along. We really want to get the testimony in and get the consultant to finish his presentation or their presentation. After we take all the testimony from you, we'll then maybe see if we have time to do a little Q&A so we can perhaps clarify some things that aren't crystal clear to you. What else? Once again, this is an informational briefing about the Waikiki Beach Improvement and Maintenance Program. After the public testimony, we can try to address written questions. The comment period on the EISPN ends on January 22nd, so definitely if you'd like to provide formal written comments, please get your comments in before January 22nd so we can consider them in the EISPN and in the development of the forthcoming draft environmental impact statement. The only other thing I wanted to add is that the event is being recorded. I don't know how many people are lined up to testify on this, but I ask that you be relatively brief and concise in your comments so that we can give other people, all the people who want to participate, an opportunity to provide us with their input. That would be the courteous thing to do. And with that, I believe I am ready to turn it over to the consultant, Andy Bolander from Sea Engineering, Inc. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Sam. I hope that everybody can see the presentation that's on the screen. Aloha, good afternoon, and of course, Happy New Year to everyone. We appreciate everyone taking time out of your busy schedules to attend today's meeting. As Sam mentioned, our intention with today's meeting is to provide a general overview of the Waikiki Beach Improvement and Maintenance Program and the actions that are being proposed for implementation in Waikiki. Most importantly, we're here to listen and gather feedback from the community and local stakeholders to ensure that we address the full range of ideas and perspectives, issues and concerns as we proceed with the development of the draft EIS. So with that, I will begin the presentation. Really quickly, I just want to go over this. Many of you might already be familiar with the Chapter 343 environmental review process, but for those who might not be, I want to just briefly describe it. Hawaii Revised Statutes Chapter 343 establishes the uses and activities that require environmental review. An environmental assessment is typically required to determine whether an action or group of actions may have a significant effect. In this case, the proposing agency, the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, determined that the proposed actions collectively may have a significant impact and that an environmental impact statement is required. An EIS it basically requires everything that an EA would require, but it provides a more comprehensive analysis of reasonable alternatives and potential impacts. The purpose of the EISPN that was recently published is primarily to notify the public that an EIS is being prepared and to provide a general overview of the proposed actions. The EISPN is the first step in the process, and it provides an opportunity for the proposing agency to gather feedback from the public and stakeholders to inform the development of that comprehensive draft EIS that will address the broader range of alternatives and potential impacts. So as Sam mentioned, in addition to the oral testimony that will be recorded during today's meeting, written comments can be submitted to us via email at waikiki@centengineering.com. The deadline for comments is January 22nd of this month, so please get your comments to us before then. And we will try to incorporate them to the best of our ability in the draft EIS, which we plan to publish in the next 3 to 4 months. It's important to note that this is just the first opportunity to provide comments. After the draft EIS is published, there'll be a 45-day comment period and an additional public meeting. So we'll get to do this again. So again, the EISPN was published in the OEQC, the environmental notice, on the 23rd of December, 2020, and it's available for download on the OEQC website. The link is shown at the bottom of the slide. An official request for comments was distributed to the parties listed in the EISPN distribution list that's on page 156 of the EISPN. And then some additional stakeholders were contacted informally and encouraged to comment on the EISPN as well. So we anticipate receiving a lot of feedback on these projects. So the Waikiki Beach Improvement and Maintenance Program is a joint public-private partnership. The project proponents consist of DLNR as the lead agency, the Waikiki Beach Special Improvement District Association as a nonprofit cost-sharing organization, and the Waikiki Beach Community Advisory Committee as a stakeholder advisory group. These three groups have worked together over the past several years to establish the priorities and objectives of the program and to develop, to guide the development rather of the proposed beach improvement and maintenance actions. A key component of the early consultation process was the establishment of the Waikiki Beach Community Advisory Committee, or the WEBCAC as we refer it to. The WEBCAC is composed of a broad spectrum of stakeholders representing a wide range of experience, expertise, and perspectives in Waikiki. And it's played a vital role in establishing the issues and priorities for each of the beach sectors and guiding the conceptual design process. Included a link at the bottom of the slide here. If you want more information about the WEBCAC, it's available on the WebCETA website. So the planning process for the Waikiki Beach Improvement and Maintenance Program began in late 2016. We had an initial kickoff meeting followed up by an initial public meeting that was held at the Waikiki at the Waikiki Community Center in December of 2017. Since then, the WEBCAC has held 5 formal meetings. The next meeting is scheduled for the 19th of this month, during which we will review the EISPN and gather additional feedback. The agenda and the meeting minutes from the previous WEBCAC meetings are included in Appendix A of the EISPN. So today's meeting is really just the next step in that early consultation process. So just a little bit of background. When people think of Waikiki, of course, they think of gorgeous beaches and turquoise waters and perfect waves. Waikiki is obviously recognized as a world-class tourism destination that draws people from all around the world to visit us in Hawaii. And a number of surveys over the years have found that the beaches are one of the primary reasons that people choose to visit Waikiki in particular. In addition to being the primary amenity that drives our tourism-based economy, the beaches of Waikiki have tremendous historical, cultural, aesthetic, and recreational value. Unfortunately, due to a combination of factors, the beaches of Waikiki are in a deteriorated condition at this time, and we seek to address that through this program. So Waikiki has a long history. The shoreline that we see today is almost entirely engineered. Over the past century, a total of 37 seawalls and 42 groins or groin-like structures have been constructed in Waikiki, as well as multiple breakwaters and a series of piers, most of which are no longer existing. The groin structures essentially compartmentalize the shoreline into discrete cells, or what we refer to as beach sectors, that have unique characteristics and processes. The shoreline configuration is largely a byproduct of the larger groins and breakwaters that dominate that influence the coastal processes in each of those sectors. Unfortunately, for the past 35 years or so, the beaches have mostly been experiencing chronic erosion, and until recently, just in the past 10 years or so, very little was being done to restore and maintain the beaches. So this figure that you see here is kind of an overview slide of the beach sectors in Waikiki. The entire shoreline spans over 10,000 linear feet or 2 miles of shoreline. And again, the individual sectors are compartmentalized by a series of groins to create 8 distinct littoral cells. So beginning at the west end of the shoreline, see if I can use my cursor here, over here at the west end, we begin with what we refer to as the Duke Kahanamoku beach sector. It spans approximately 1,100 feet of shoreline, extending from a rock rubble mound breakwater over here on the left, over to the Hilton Pier, which includes a groin that extends back into the beach. That leads us to proceeding east to the Fort de Rusi beach sector, which extends from the Hilton Pier and groin about 1,680 feet to the Fort de Rusi outfall groin that's located right here. The next cell to the east is referred to as the Halekulani beach sector, consists of about 1,450 feet of shoreline that extends from the Fort de Rusi outfall groin on the west end to the Royal Hawaiian groin on the east end. Continuing to the east is the Royal Hawaiian beach sector here. Item D on the figure consists of approximately 1,730 feet of shoreline that extends from the Royal Hawaiian groin at the west end to the Eva, or the west groin, at Kuhio Beach Park. Continuing east, we have the Kuhio beach sector, which spans about 1,500 feet of shoreline and consists of 2 swim basins, the Eva swim basin and what we refer to as the Diamond Head swim basin that ends at the Kapahulu storm drain about here. And then proceeding further west, we have I gotta jump back real quick. We have the Queens beach sector, Kapiolani beach sector, and the Kaimana beach sector. So as I previously mentioned, the beaches of Waikiki have been chronically eroding since the mid-1980s. In addition to the associated beach narrowing and beach loss, the erosion has caused a variety of other negative effects in Waikiki. The erosion and the flooding has limited shoreline access. It's caused structural damage and kind of contributed to the overall deterioration of the shoreline conditions along Waikiki. The economic impacts of beach loss in Waikiki are tremendous and really can't be overstated. And without beach maintenance and improvements, the beaches of Waikiki could be completely lost to erosion by mid-century or sooner. Complete erosion of Waikiki Beach could result in an annual loss of over $2 billion in annual visitor expenditures. That was based on a study that was conducted in 2018. So here are just a few photographs. I hope they're large enough for you folks to see that just kind of highlight some of the issues and the need for beach improvements and maintenance in Waikiki. Photograph A is of the beach walkway in the Fort de Rusi beach sector. Basically, erosion and sediment loss has caused significant beach narrowing at the east end of Fort de Rusi Beach. And the beach walkway, which is constructed on top of a seawall that was constructed in 1916 and spans the entire length of the shoreline, is frequently overtopped by waves, particularly during high tide and high surf events. And periodic maintenance is required to push the sand back onto the beach. As the shoreline approaches the existing shoreline armoring, there will be incremental loss of recreational beach area until eventually, without maintenance or improvements, basically no dry beach will remain in that area. Photograph B is of waves overtopping the seawall fronting the Sheraton Waikiki Hotel in the Halekulani Beach sector. The seawall was constructed in the early 1900s, and a concrete walkway on top of the seawall provides the only lateral shoreline access between Royal Hawaiian Beach and the Fort de Rusi Beach sector. Unfortunately, the walkway has been closed for over 3 years due to structural damage that has caused unsafe conditions. So there's really no lateral shoreline access in this area. Photograph C is of high tide flooding in the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector. Flooding has become more frequent in recent years as Hawaii has experienced record high tides, often referred to as king tides, and a persistent sea level anomaly of 6 to 12 inches above predicted high tide levels. During typical high tides at this time, nearly 2/3 of the beach is submerged, and during extreme high tides, almost the entire beach in this area is submerged at high tide. This has kind of provided us with a glimpse into the future of how sea level rise will affect beaches in Waikiki. Photograph D shows the east end of the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector. The structure you see in the photo is the old concrete foundation from the original Waikiki Tavern. When the foundation is exposed by erosion, not only is the beach unusable, it creates a hazardous condition for beach users and has resulted in damage and flanking of the Eba groin at Kuhio Beach Park. Photograph E shows the Eba swim basin in the Kuhio Beach sector. The central portion of the shoreline here is very narrow. The beach is very narrow. It's basically being squeezed against the seawalls that run along Kalakau Avenue. At times, the flooding is so severe in this area that there's basically almost no dry beach area. So in consultation with the Waikiki Beach Community Advisory Committee, it was determined that the highest priorities for beach improvement and maintenance actions in Waikiki are in order: the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector, the Kuhio Beach sector, Halekulani Beach sector, and Fort DeRusi Beach sector. The WIBCAC also determined that of the options available to address these issues in these areas, that beach restoration and maintenance were the preferred options. So the primary objectives of the proposed actions are to restore and improve Waikiki's public beaches, to increase beach stability through improvement and maintenance of shoreline structures, to provide safe access to and along the shoreline, and to increase resilience to coastal hazards and sea level rise. The WIBCAC also established criteria to guide the planning process for beach improvement and maintenance in Waikiki. The primary objectives of the program are to improve beach stability, improve lateral shoreline access, and increase resilience to sea level rise and coastal hazards. The actions that are proposed are designed to accommodate sea level rise over the next 50 years and are also designed to be adaptable beyond that time. The actions would be implemented in phases with an emphasis on supporting the widest range of possible uses with the least amount of disruption. So I just want to go through a couple of slides to provide an overview of each of the beach sectors and sort of highlight some of the issues and problems that we're trying to deal with through this program. As I mentioned, the Fort DeRusi Beach sector consists of approximately 1,680 feet of shoreline that extends from the Hilton Hawaiian Village Pier to the Fort DeRusi outfall groin. The Fort DeRusi is an entirely engineered shoreline. The entire shoreline is armored by a seawall that was constructed in 1916 at a time when there was no beach in this area. Subsequent to that, there was a lot of offshore dredging that was done, some of it for military purposes. And the beach itself was constructed in the early 1970s using a mixture of sand and crushed coral that was dredged from the offshore reef. The primary problems in the Fort DeRusi Beach sector are chronic erosion and beach loss at the east end of the beach, wave overtopping along the Fort DeRusi Beach walkway, and overall just sort of general sand compaction throughout the entire beach, which is sort of a byproduct of the use of the crushed coral when they constructed the beach in the 70s. So the beach has historically eroded at a rate of about minus 0.4 feet per year. That's from 1927 to 2015. That analysis was conducted by the University of Hawaii Coastal Geology Group. But beach erosion does not occur uniformly throughout this sector. The east end of the beach has been eroding at a rate of about 1.2 feet per year, whereas the west end of the beach is actually accreted at a rate of about 0.4 feet per year. The reason for that, the reason that the erosion is more pronounced at the east end of the beach is because the predominant direction of sediment transport is from east to west. So sand is moving from the east end of the beach and accumulating at the west end, and there's really no natural mechanism to bring that sand back from west to east. Erosion, coastal flooding, and beach loss in the Fort DeRusi Beach sector are projected to increase as sea levels continue to rise. And without beach improvements or maintenance, it's possible that sea level rise will result in total beach loss, at least at the east end of the beach sector, by mid-century or sooner. It is worth noting that there have been no significant beach improvements or maintenance at Fort DeRusi Beach since about the mid-1990s. The Halekulani Beach sector consists of approximately 1,680 feet of shoreline that extends from the Fort DeRusi outfall groin to the Royal Hawaiian groin. Halekulani Beach sector is also an entirely engineered shoreline. The entire shoreline is armored by seawalls that were constructed in the early 1900s, many of which are in various states of disrepair. The primary issues and problems in the Halekulani Beach sector are a limited amount of dry beach area, erosion and beach narrowing in those areas, limited lateral access along the shoreline. Mostly lateral access is provided by the walkways that are constructed on top of the seawalls. And as I mentioned earlier, they are often closed due to unsafe conditions. Wave overtopping and wave reflection from the existing seawalls, making it difficult for a beach to accumulate and remain stable in this area. And then the deterioration and potential failure of the existing shore protection structures. The beach in this area has changed very little over the past century. That can be attributed to the limited volume of sand that's present along the seawalls. Again, similar to Fort DeRussy, we expect erosion, coastal flooding, and beach loss will be projected to increase as sea levels continue to rise, making it important that we evaluate options for beach improvements and maintenance in this area. With the exception of the replacement of the Royal Hawaiian groin, which was completed in August of 2020, there have been no beach improvements or maintenance in the Halekulani Beach sector since the 1930s. The Royal Hawaiian Beach sector, which is kind of right in the middle of Waikiki, and it's the beach that most people think of when they think of Waikiki, spans about 1,730 feet of shoreline that extends from the Royal Hawaiian groin east to the Eva groin at Kuhio Beach Park. The Royal Hawaiian Beach sector is also an entirely engineered shoreline. Almost the entire shoreline is armored by seawalls that were constructed in the early 1900s, and beach stability is essentially a byproduct of the presence of the groins at either end of the beach cell. The primary problems in the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector are chronic erosion and beach narrowing, seasonal beach erosion, deterioration and potential failure of existing structures, limited lateral shoreline access, particularly during high tides and high surf events, and beach loss at the Diamond Head end of the beach sector. The beach began to experience chronic erosion in the mid-1980s, and since then had been eroding at a rate of about 1 to 3 feet per year. The erosion is more pronounced at the east end of the beach because the predominant direction of sediment transport is from east to west. There was a project in 2012, the Waikiki Beach Maintenance 1 project, that involved recovery of sand from offshore, placement of approximately 24,000 cubic yards of sand on the beach, which widened the beach by an average of about 37 feet, which was consistent with the beach width that was present in 1985 before the shoreline began to kind of went into a trend of more chronic erosion. There have been some recent improvements in the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector, the 2012 project, the beach maintenance project, and then in 2019, a sandbag groin was constructed near the east end of the beach to address the sort of hotspot erosion in that area. And then most recently in August of 2020 was the replacement of the Royal Hawaiian groin, which was originally a concrete wall groin and was replaced with a sort of more modern rock rubble mound groin. The Kuhio Beach sector consists of about 1,500 feet of shoreline that extends from the Eva groin at Kuhio Beach Park to the Kapahulu storm drain. Again, it's an entirely engineered shoreline. The seawalls were constructed along the entire length of Kalakaua Avenue in this area in the early 1900s. And then the beach itself and the breakwater system was constructed in the 1930s and 40s. There have been various beach maintenance efforts in this area that occurred between about 1950 and the year 2000. The most recent being the Kuhio Beach Nourishment Project in 2006, when about 10,000 cubic yards of sand was recovered from offshore and placed on the beach. There really haven't been any major improvements since then, so over the past 15 years. The primary problems in the Kuhio Beach sector are beach narrowing, seaward slumping of the beach, seasonal beach erosion, lack of maintenance of existing structures, public safety hazards on the existing breakwater and groins, and beach narrowing in the Diamond Head Basin. There are also concerns about potential water quality issues within the swim basins. So the Waikiki Beach Improvement and Maintenance Program consists of 4 individual projects or proposed actions. In the Fort DeRussy sector, we're looking at doing beach maintenance, which would consist of sand backpassing. In the Halekulani Beach sector, we'd be looking at doing beach construction with stabilizing groins. In the Royal Hawaiian Beach sector, we would be doing continued beach nourishment as was done in 2012 and will be done again this coming, actually in 2021 in the next few months. And then in the Kuhio Beach sector, we'd be proposing to do a combination of beach nourishment with a segmented breakwater in the Eva Basin and sort of periodic beach maintenance in the Diamond Head Basin. Collectively, these proposed actions will require approximately 115,000 cubic yards of sand from various sources in the vicinity of Waikiki. So this is just a sort of a conceptual rendering of what the proposed actions would look like when they were completed in combination. It's important to note that the area that you see in tan along the beach represents the full width of the design beach profile, including the submerged portion of the beach that extends seaward to the beach toe. The actual dry beach that would be visible to beach users and usable to beach users would be smaller than what's shown in the figure. The intention of the proposed actions is to improve beach width and stability while minimizing changes to the existing configuration of the shoreline. The exception to this would be the proposed beach construction in the Halekulani Beach sector, where there's almost no dry beach today. The reason for that is one of the primary objectives of this program is to improve lateral access along the shoreline. The proposed beach construction in the Halekulani sector would establish safe and contiguous lateral access along the entire Waikiki shoreline, essentially bridging the east and west ends of Waikiki, something that's really never been possible before. So in terms of potential sand sources, a key component of this program is the availability of sand that is beach compatible to support these nourishment, our maintenance and improvement efforts. We conducted offshore sand investigations in 2017. We investigated 6 offshore deposits, all of which were within 7 miles of Waikiki. In total, the deposits cover about 180 acres and contain nearly 1.2 million cubic yards of sand. The state of Hawaii has established guidelines to determine what sand can be used for beach nourishment purposes. Most of those requirements focus on grain size compatibility with the existing beach and the percentage of fine materials that's contained within the borrow sand. In terms of applicability, the Reef Runway deposit has a very large volume of sand, 200,000 cubic yards is an estimate. Unfortunately, that sand does not comply with the state of Hawaii requirements for use in Waikiki. The sand deposit at Ala Moana contains about 190,000 cubic yards of sand and could potentially be used to support beach nourishment projects in the Halekulani and Kuhio beach sectors. The Hilton deposit contains about 45,000 cubic yards of sand and could potentially support projects in Fort DeRussy, Halekulani, and Kuhio beach sectors. The Halekulani Channel contains a very large volume of sand, approximately 580,000 cubic yards. It gets progressively finer offshore, so we might be limited in terms of how much sand we could use. It would need to be probably taken from the inner channel, and it would be most suitable for beach nourishment purposes in the Halekulani beach sector. The Canoes Queens offshore deposit contains about 50,000 cubic yards of sand. This is the deposit that's been used for the beach nourishment in 2012 and will be used again in 2021. And while it could be used to support beach nourishment in Kuhio and Halekulani beach sectors, it's really best suited for the Royal Hawaiian beach sector. The last deposit that we investigated was off of Diamond Head, and there's about 110,000 cubic yards of sand in that deposit. And it could potentially be used to support beach nourishment projects in all 4 of the beach sectors. But it is further away from the project site. This is just a map showing where those deposits are. You can see that the Reef Runway deposit is the furthest away from Waikiki. It's about 7 miles away. And then the Diamond Head deposit is also kind of located just around the corner of Diamond Head there. So there are various methods that we can use to recover offshore sand and transport it to the shoreline. Those methods include a hydraulic suction dredge, a clamshell dredge, an ROV submersible dredge, or a sub dredge. and a diver operated dredge, which is a very small scale sort of nimble system that can be moved around to move relatively small volumes of sand without as much mobilization of large equipment and barges and such. Each of these options has inherent advantages and disadvantages, and one may not be appropriate depending on what the scale of the project is. We will be investigating these options further and discussing them in more detail in the draft EIS. So the proposed action for the Fort DeRussy beach sector is sand backpassing. The plan would be to backpass about 1,200 cubic yards of sand from the accreted area at the west end of Fort DeRussy Beach and basically transport it to the east end of the beach where we're dealing with the chronic erosion issues next to the Fort DeRussy outfall groin. This figure shows the conceptual layout for the sand backpassing at Fort DeRussy. The sand would be basically transported, like I said, from west to east. The advantage of this option is that it can be done relatively efficiently without the need to recover sand from offshore. A disadvantage is that the volume of sand to be backpassed is relatively small, so periodic backpassing would be required. For the Halekulani beach sector, as I mentioned, we're proposing to do beach construction with stabilizing groins. That would basically be designed to stabilize the sand within the cells between the groins. There is an option of including an optional beach walkway that would be ADA accessible to provide safe lateral access along the entire shoreline. But we're kind of still investigating that option and looking for feedback on that. This project would require about 60,000 cubic yards of sand. And this is the conceptual layout for the proposed beach construction. It would consist of a series of 3 T-head groins that would be installed, and the existing Fort DeRussy outfall groin and Royal Hawaiian groin would be modified to help stabilize the sand in each of the groin cells at either end of the shoreline. The sand would be recovered from offshore deposits and placed along the shoreline to achieve the design profile. An advantage of this option is the beach cells would be very stable. The groins are very durable and they require very little maintenance. A disadvantage of this option is obviously the larger scale, and it would fundamentally change the existing configuration of the shoreline. However, due to the lack of dry beach and limited public access in this area, beach construction was determined to be the preferred alternative. The Royal Hawaiian beach sector, the proposed action is basically continued beach nourishment, as was done in 2012 and will be done again this year. Those beach nourishment efforts require somewhere between 20 and 30,000 cubic yards of sand, depending on conditions at the time. And here is a conceptual layout of what that would look like. Again, the sand would be recovered from the Canoes Queens offshore deposit and brought to the beach, dewatered, and taken down the beach to be placed. No structural modifications or new structures are proposed for this option. The project would essentially mimic what was done in 2012 and what will be done again this year. The advantage of this option is that it will increase the recreational dry beach area and improve lateral shoreline access, particularly during high tides and high surf events. The disadvantage of this option is that without stabilizing structures, we would anticipate that the beach would continue to erode, so periodic renourishment would be required. We have 2 proposed actions in the Kuhio Beach sector. The first is for the Ewa Basin. That's the West Swim Basin. That would consist of beach nourishment with a segmented breakwater. Essentially, we would modify the existing breakwater to create a segmented breakwater that would essentially control the wave climate within the basin. It would cause refraction that would help to shape the plan form of the beach to help maintain a stable beach profile. That would require about 24,000 cubic yards of sand for the initial nourishment. Again, here's the conceptual layout for this action. The sand would again be recovered from offshore deposits, placed along the shoreline. An advantage of this option is it would increase recreational dry beach area and maintain, basically the segmented breakwater would help to create a wave climate within the basin that would maintain a more stable beach profile. The disadvantage is that we would need to modify the existing breakwater and groins in order for this to be effective. The Second proposed action in Kuhio is in the Diamond Head Basin, and that is sort of similar on scale to the Fort DeRussy, the action that's proposed at Fort DeRussy. In this case, it would be beach maintenance involving bringing sand from within the basin and putting it back up on the beach. Essentially what's happened in the Diamond Head Basin is the sand from the dry beach, because of the low wave energy within the basin, that sand is slumping down into the basin and making it more shallow. We would propose to recover sort of a nominal volume of sand, about 4,500 cubic yards from within the basin, and bring it back up onto the beach. This is what the conceptual layout looks like. There are no structural modifications or new structures being proposed for this action. The advantage is that it would increase recreational dry beach and improve lateral shoreline access, with the disadvantage being that the slumping would continue to occur because we're not altering the wave climate within the basin. The slumping would continue to occur. So we would need to conduct periodic maintenance going forward. So an important component of the EIS process is obviously the evaluation of reasonable alternatives to the proposed actions. We as a team recognize that, the uniqueness of Waikiki, and that there really are no one-size-fits-all solutions. However, we also acknowledge that without beach improvements and maintenance, it's likely that sea level rise will result in total beach loss in many areas of Waikiki within this century, as the beaches are essentially squeezed between rising water levels and the seawalls that line almost the entire backshore in this area. Again, the impacts of beach loss in Waikiki simply cannot be overstated. It's our hope that through the EIS process, we can achieve consensus on how to ensure that our beaches in Waikiki remain sustainable and resilient for current and future generations. So in terms of potential impacts, in this case, the proposing agency DLNR determined that the proposed actions may have a significant effect and that an EIS is required. Again, the purpose of the EISPN is not to assess all of those impacts, but rather to gather feedback from stakeholders and subject matter experts to ensure that we fully understand and are able to consider the full range of potential impacts and determine how to prevent or minimize those impacts to the extent practicable. The list here shown on the slide, while not exhaustive, covers some of the key impacts that are being evaluated in the draft EIS. All of the proposed actions will require some combination of federal, state, and city and county Honolulu approvals. The approvals for each action will depend on the size, scope, nature, location, and potential impacts associated with the project. And it's important to note that permit applications would not be submitted until after the final EIS is approved. So with that, I would just like to thank some folks, particularly DLNR, Sam and his staff, for their continued efforts and leadership in this area. The Waikiki Special Improvement District Association for their support as a co-sponsor. In particular, Dolan Eversole for his tireless efforts to engage a broad spectrum of stakeholders in Waikiki. And lastly, and most importantly, all of you for participating in today's meeting. We value your feedback and we really look forward to hearing your concerns and doing our best to address them in the draft EIS. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to Sam.
Thanks, Andy. Nicely done. And you stole all my thunder. I wanted to pass out those kudos and thank the group for spending their afternoon with us today, but you've already done that. Good on you. So I've got a lot of familiar names on the list. I'm not seeing a lot of hands. Just give me a moment. I do see one hand up, and so let's go ahead and allow Valerie to testify.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is Valerie Haney. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just excited that this project has come to this point. I wholeheartedly agree with this program, and that's the main reason I wanted to join you all today, because I've been a snowbird type resident of Waikiki Shore Apartments for years and years, and it's just so sad to see the degradation of Waikiki Beach, which has obviously been occurring even many years before I was able to come and enjoy your beach in this beautiful state. And we've not seen any comprehensive plan to alleviate these damages. This is the first one I've ever seen. And now the situation's critical. I would say it's actually in crisis. So in my view, the reason I wanted to testify is because I want you to know that I see this improvement and maintenance program as mandatory if we want to save this beach, period. That's it. That's
Thank you,
simple as
Valerie.
that.
Appreciate your enthusiasm, passion for this. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. Well, you know, this is a public informational meeting. I'm sure you've tuned in to hear what the state, what our consultants, what Waikiki Beach CETA would like to do with Waikiki. This is very much at the preliminary stage, and we've just sort of shared with you our first cut of what we're conceptually anticipating we'd like to do. We have a long ways to go on this. As Andy explained, we have to prepare a draft environmental impact statement. There'll be more scoping meetings. There'll be commenting periods. But once again, you know, this is an opportunity for you to say something if you'd like, and no pressure, but I just want you to understand that before I close the meeting so that we don't have any hiccups for any of us. So once again, I see a hand. I see Vanetta.
Vanita, yes.
Vanita,
I'm walking outdoors. So I hope can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I am the author of a wonderful book that I call Waikiki 9 Walks Through Time. I first published it in 1983 when you could walk the beach. Walk number 9 is a walk along the beach. The next book was 2003, where you could barely walk across the beach. So my hope is that my third revision will be back to walking along the beach. Thank you for what you're doing. This is of the utmost importance. I'd like to help you and join any committee that's out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanita. Thank you for your books.
Oh, I love the place. We've got to keep it going.
Okay. Aloha. Okay, I got Mike. We got Mike. Mike would like to testify. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Good afternoon. This is Mike Schaff. I'm actually with Outrigger Hospitality Group. And so clearly we're excited about this project and strongly support it. You know, the beaches are, as was mentioned earlier, a vital part of the destination, most definitely. And, you know, we have two properties on the beach, and clearly just the destination is very beach centric and critical. Along with the clear benefits of having, you know, that destination and the beaches available to all of the tourism industry that comes through here, you know, we are dealing with infrastructure issues as well, not only on private property, but, you know, clearly, as mentioned, failing groins and, you know, no connectivity between the Halekulani end of the beach sector all the way down to the Kuhio. You know, it's unusual in a beach destination, most certainly, to not have that connectivity where people walking along need to literally go inland to roads, cross, and then come back out to the beach. So, you know, we are absolutely very much in support of this here, particularly that work, you know, in the Halekulani beach sector, you know, where there just is zero beach at this point here, to the point made. Those king tides, when they come in, you know, it's actually dangerous to the public. You know, I have personally watched people try to traverse, and it's just not a safe environment. There are sinkholes that are in existence today in front of that infrastructure as well. So, you know, from the hospitality standpoint here, you know, it's going to be years as we try to recover from COVID situation we had in 2020 and we have currently today. So, you know, not having that beach as we look at the next 5, 10 years would be very problematic, I think, to the overall economy and just what this great city has to offer from a cultural standpoint. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for that testimony, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, we got Cynthia Furious.
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
I just have a quick question. Someone asked earlier whether or not a copy of the presentation would be made available. Not sure if that was answered. I tuned in a little bit late.
Yeah, we'll post it for you on our website.
Okay, great. Thanks.
If that's okay with Andy.
Absolutely, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Huh. I'm not seeing any little hands.
I don't know.
So
I don't have questions yet. What am I going to say?
Okay,
I have a lot of questions. When are you going to start working? How long is this process going to take? No.
somebody's talking and I can hear them, and I don't have you up. I guess I'm just gonna at this point I'm going to thank everybody for participating. And as I said, I want to reiterate that if you're going to provide written comments, do that by January 22nd of this month. And we hope to see you at the next venue that we'll hold to take to present what we've done and to take your input at that point. And very much appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Thankful for everything we have, despite what's happening across the globe, and hoping for a better year. So with that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and close the hearing. And I want to say aloha to everybody and mahalo.
Mahalo to you too. Thank you very much.